What if I told you that the Luo people, one of the most influential communities in East Africa, traced their roots back to a journey that began thousands of years ago along the mighty Nile River? A journey so mysterious, so layered with twists and turns, that historians and storytellers still debate its true path. This isn't just about migration. It's about a hidden thread that connects the Luo to lost kingdoms, ancient civilizations, and cultural traditions that have survived against all odds. Imagine standing on the shores of Lake Victoria today, hearing the sound of drums and songs passed down for generations, and realizing those echoes might carry whispers from the very banks of the Nile Valley. How did a people who once thrived so far north find themselves shaping the heart of East Africa? Stay with me, because in this video, we're uncovering the shocking truth about the origin of the Luo people, and what you'll discover might just change the way you see African history forever. By the end of this video, you'll understand not just where the Luo came from, but why their story changes how we see African history itself. The Luo are more than just a community living around Lake Victoria today. Their history is a bridge between ancient kingdoms and modern nations, a living record of survival, adaptation, and influence. We're going to trace their steps back through time, uncovering the different stages of their migration and the clues they left behind. You'll see how language, cattle keeping, and oral traditions carry fragments of a journey that started far from where the Luo live now. You'll hear about surprising links to ancient Nile Valley civilizations, about legends that speak of kings and warriors, and about cultural practices that serve as markers of a much bigger story. But here's where it gets even more intriguing. There isn't just one version of the Luo origin story. Some accounts place them deep in Sudan, others connect them to Ethiopia, and a few theories reach back toward Egypt itself. So the question is, what's the real truth, and why does it matter today? Keep watching, because the answers will surprise you. Long before the Luo settled around the great waters of Lake Victoria, their ancestors lived along the mighty Nile. Picture this. A people moving with their cattle, following the riverbanks, thriving on fishing, farming, and trade. They were not yet known as the Luo we recognize today, but their roots were already deep, tied to one of the most important rivers in human history. The Nile wasn't just a source of life. It was a highway, a corridor of cultures, kingdoms, and mysteries. And here's where the first great puzzle appears. Where exactly did the Luo story begin? Some historians argue that their earliest home was in what is now South Sudan, near the Bahr el Ghazal and the Upper Nile region, where other Nilotic groups still live. Others claim their footsteps stretch even further north, into the lands of Ethiopia, and perhaps even touching the edge of ancient Egypt itself. Then there are scholars who place their beginnings in the savannas between Sudan and Uganda, suggesting a more gradual southward drift. Each of these theories has its evidence: similarities in language, shared traditions, even oral stories passed down through centuries. But the problem is, none of them line up perfectly. It's like looking at a puzzle with missing pieces. We see the edges, we recognize the shapes, but the full picture remains blurry. So what pushed the Luo to leave their northern homelands? Was it drought? Was it conflict with powerful kingdoms? Or was it something else entirely? Something hidden in plain sight? What we know is that the Luo didn't just wander aimlessly south. Their journey was intentional, guided by survival, by opportunity, and by a vision of a new home. But here's the twist. If you think the strongest evidence of their past lies in dusty ruins or ancient scripts, you'd be mistaken. The real trail of their origin doesn't lie where most people expect. It's hidden in a place far more surprising. The story of the Luo migration is not one of single journey, but of stages, waves of movement that stretched over centuries. Imagine families setting out from the Nile Valley in small groups, their cattle in tow, their fishing nets carefully packed, their songs and stories carried in memory. They didn't just wake up one day and decide to leave. Their migration unfolded slowly, shaped by pressures and opportunities that pulled them southward. The first stage placed them around the swamps and grasslands of southern Sudan. Here, they lived among other Nilotic groups, sharing language roots and traditions. But as populations grew and resources stretched thin, groups of Luo ancestors moved further, seeking fertile land and safer pastures. Oral history tells us they crossed through northern Uganda, leaving traces in place names, dialects, and practices that still echo in those regions today. Then came the great movement into present-day Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. Around Lake Kyoga, smaller Luo clans settled, blending with local communities, before some pressed on further south to the shores of Lake Victoria. It was here that their identity crystallized into what we now call the Luo people. Their language, Doluo, carried across this entire journey, evolving but still retaining a recognizable thread that ties back to their Nilotic origins. And they didn't just carry words with them, they carried a way of life. Cattle remained a symbol of wealth and pride, not just as food, but as part of marriage, rituals, and status. Fishing became central as they reached the vast waters of Lake Victoria, while their leadership structures, chiefs, elders, and council systems ensured order within expanding communities. Even their music and storytelling traditions preserved the memory of who they were and where they came from. So yes, we can now see the path they took from the Nile through Sudan, Uganda, and finally to Lake Victoria. That answers the question of how they moved, but a bigger, more challenging question remains. Why did they leave in the first place? Was it simply about finding food and water? Or was there a deeper force, perhaps wars with powerful kingdoms, or even the shadow of Egypt's rise and fall that drove them south? The answer to that lies in the next twist of their story. Some scholars believe the Luo were simply part of a slow, predictable migration of Nilotic tribes drifting southward over generations. Others argue that their journey was far more dramatic, that they were pushed out of their homelands by powerful kingdoms that rose and fell along the Nile. But here's the twist most people don't know. The Luo story may be tied, in surprising ways, to the great civilizations of the Nile Valley itself. Think about it. The Luo are Nilotic, and the Nile has always been their lifeline. Ancient records speak of pastoral groups moving in and out of Egypt during the time of the pharaohs. Some of these groups were known for their height, their cattle culture, and their warrior spirit, descriptions that eerily mirror the Luo and their cousins today. Could it be that the ancestors of the Luo once brushed shoulders with the builders of the pyramids? Even more fascinating are the oral traditions. Among the Luo, there are stories of powerful ancestors who came from the north, a vague but persistent memory of a land beyond Sudan. Some legends speak of journeys that began near the kingdoms of Nubia, others of ties to rulers who were once close to the pharaohs themselves. While historians debate how literal these stories are, their persistence suggests a memory too strong to ignore. And here's another striking clue: the Luo language. Doluo, like other Nilotic tongues, carries patterns and words that link back to ancient languages spoken further up the Nile. Language is a stubborn thing. It changes, yes, but it also preserves fingerprints of the past. Every time the Luo speak, they are, in a sense, echoing voices that may have once resonated through the Nile Valley. So now, the story of the Luo isn't just about migration, it's about connection. It's about a people whose roots may intertwine with some of the most iconic civilizations in human history. The Luo didn't just move south because of hunger or conflict. Their movement may have been shaped by the rise and fall of empires, by shifts in power that forced entire communities to seek new lands. But this raises an even bigger question. If their journey is linked to such ancient civilizations, how much of that legacy survived the migration? The answer, surprisingly, is written not in ruins or monuments, but in the culture the Luo still live out today. If you really want to understand where the Luo came from, you don't need to dig through dusty archives. You just need to look at their culture. It's like breadcrumbs left behind on a long journey, each custom pointing back to where they once were and what they carried along the way. Take naming traditions, for example. Among the Luo, names often describe the circumstances of a child's birth, time of day, weather, or events happening at the moment. This practice mirrors ancient Nilotic systems where identity was always tied to story and memory. It's not just a name, it's history written into everyday life. Then there's cattle. For the Luo, cattle were never just animals. They were wealth, they were marriage dowries, they were sacred. This obsession with cattle links them to other Nilotic groups in Sudan and beyond, painting a picture of shared origins along the Nile. When they reached Lake Victoria, they adapted, embracing fishing as a way of life, yet still kept cattle at the heart of their identity. Music and oral storytelling, too, serve as living museums. The rhythm of Luo drums, the chants, the tales of ancestors, they carry echoes of lands once left behind. Even leadership structures, with elders and councils guiding the community, trace back to systems practiced by Nilotic groups centuries ago. So yes, their culture answers one big question: what did the Luo carry with them as they moved? But it also opens up an even deeper question. If their culture is this unique, if it preserves so much of their history, what does it reveal about their place in the broader African story? Could the Luo be one of the missing links that connect the past glory of the Nile to the present vibrancy of East Africa? Today, the Luo story is written across 4 nations: Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and South Sudan. Around Lake Victoria, their fishing communities thrive, preserving traditions while blending into the modern economy. In Uganda and Tanzania, Luo-descended groups still hold on to pieces of their Nilotic roots, living proof of just how far this migration stretched. And in South Sudan, where many Nilotic peoples remain, we see the Luo's ancestral connections still alive in shared language patterns and cultural practices. But the Luo are not just keepers of history, they are influencers of the present. In Kenya, names like Raila Odinga and Tom Mboya instantly stand out, shaping politics, leadership, and the future of a nation. Globally, the Luo heritage even extends to the family of Barack Obama Sr., father of the former US president. Think about that. A migration that began thousands of years ago along the Nile now echoes in the White House, influencing global politics. That's not just history, it's legacy. The story of the Luo isn't just ancient, it's shaping global narratives today. Their resilience, their culture, and their contributions prove that the journey from the Nile to Lake Victoria was more than survival, it was destiny. But if this journey connects the Luo to the rise and fall of empires and even to global leadership today, then one question still lingers. What is the deeper truth hidden in their origin that reshapes the way we understand African history itself? So, let's bring it all together. The Luo began their journey along the Nile, carrying with them the traditions of cattle, storytelling, music, and leadership that still define them today. Over centuries, they moved southward through Sudan, Uganda, and finally to the shores of Lake Victoria, adapting to new lands while never losing the heartbeat of who they were. Their migration was not random. It was shaped by droughts, wars, and the rise and fall of kingdoms that rippled all the way from Egypt to East Africa. And here's the shocking truth. The story of the Luo is not just the story of one community. It is a living bridge between the glory of the Nile Valley and the vibrancy of East Africa. They are proof that African history isn't made up of isolated tribes and disconnected cultures. It's a flowing river full of crossings, connections, and shared legacies. The Luo remind us that African identity is not a straight line. It's a web of journeys, influences, and destinies that continue to shape the world today. Their story shows us one powerful truth. Africa's past is not buried in the sand. It's alive in its people. Now that you've walked through the incredible journey of the Luo, I want to hear from you. What part of their story fascinated you the most? Their migration from the Nile? The way their culture preserves centuries of history? Or the surprising connections to global figures we see today? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's start a conversation about the untold histories that continue to shape our world. If you enjoyed uncovering these hidden layers of African history, don't forget to hit the like button. It really helps more people discover these stories. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our deep dives into the origins, migrations, and legacies of other amazing communities across the continent. And here's a little teaser. In our next video, we'll explore another fascinating group whose roots stretch across nations, empires, and centuries, a story just as surprising as the Luo. You won't want to miss it, because it will challenge what you think you know about African history and show you just how interconnected our past really is. So comment below, like, subscribe, and stay tuned. The journey is far from over. History is alive, and together we're tracing the paths that shaped Africa and the world.